I'm Laura McNamara in Washington, D.C. at the ACE, D.C. Fly-In and Government Affairs Summit on Capitol Hill. Joining me now is Jackie Hayes. Jackie, can you introduce yourself for us?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jackie Hayes. I'm the Business Development Manager at Whitefox Technologies.
And why did you decide to participate in the Fly-In in D.C. this year?
It's a great conference. It is an opportunity, first and foremost, to be able to meet with members of Congress who either indirectly or directly with issues that are extremely important to biofuels and not only increasing consumer demand for ethanol, but also all of the macro and kind of micro level details that are policies that are important to our customers at Whitefox, and so it's really important for myself to be aware of those and to also hear directly from ethanol producers on matters, policy matters, regulatory matters. There's matters that are important to them.
And what were some of the matters that the group was highlighting to lawmakers on this trip?
Year-round E15, first and foremost, and finding a near-term and successful vehicle to get that across the finish line. It is extremely important to Whitefox, and it's extremely important to the ethanol industry at large that we find a near-term solution for getting E15 year-round access across the finish line. It feels like at this point that we've come so close several times, and we are, I would say, at this point, wanting to hitch our wagon on the right horse, who is going to not only get it done successfully, but get it done expeditiously. Because we, I think, as an industry, are kind of done waiting for answers. So year-round E15, of course, first and foremost, is the top button issue. In addition to that, I would say, more certainty around the climate-smart agricultural practices in the 45Z modeling. That, of course, is important to ethanol producers. So it's important to us, particularly Whitefox, as a technology provider. We help ethanol producers to reduce their natural gas use within Scope 1 emissions, particularly within distillation, dehydration, and evaporation, and ethanol downstream processing. So when we're thinking about the kind of macro level of CI score modeling, climate smart agricultural practices is really important, and so it plays an important role in ethanol producers' strategy overall, which then impacts their strategy when it comes to adopting our technology. So that's, of course, a top issue. And then lastly, I would say just any kind of long-term market certainty, market demand certainty that can be lended at this time, because when that is able to be done, whether it's at either a policy or kind of just a market signal type level, it really gives the signal to the industry the certainty that they need to invest, and all of the other kind of inputs and outputs of the industry. So whether it's retailers or any kind of other kind of critical piece of the ethanol value chain, they need that certainty as well. So I would say policies that are related to that is also a top issue that we've talked about a lot this week.
And how do you feel that was received by the lawmakers that you were speaking to?
In the meetings that I was in, I think it was really positively received. We, for the most part, met with what I would call ethanol champions, for sure, which was really great, because what we used then at that point as an opportunity to get as intel from them on what would be the vehicle, the legislative kind of near-term vehicle that could get this E15 year-round delivered in the near term. And then beyond that, there would be, I think, other members of Congress and their staffers who hear that message as a kind of important piece of intel that they could then use to drive their legislative priorities. So overall, I would say it was positively received and also appreciated in a lot of the meetings that I participated in.
And did you get any specifics about what possible vehicle that could be?
We got several. So I wouldn't say it's specific, of course, because there were a lot of kind of maybe what I would describe as very, very high level indicators at best. But, there was a reconciliation number 2 that had been mentioned by a couple different staffers. There was a surface transportation package, of course, a military funding type package, a farm aid type package. A lot of the packages that were flagged as potentials by ACE did definitely come up in conversation with members of Congress, and so that was really nice, because it did give us indication on, okay, we as an industry, I think, have a an ear to the door as far as what could be a vehicle to get year-round E15 across the board. And so what the ultimate message that we convey to them as a team, myself, and then a couple other colleagues, of course, in the industry, was that we want to pick, obviously, the one that's going to be done, the vehicle that would be able to deliver year-round E15 expeditiously and successfully.
And do you feel that you made an impact being here today?
100%. Yeah. I mean, like I said, we talk to ethanol advocates, but it doesn't. You can never take that type of engagement for granted. Yes, you could meet with for example, a Congresswoman, Nikki Budzinski, who is what I would call an ethanol champion, bar none. She, either sponsors or co-sponsors or signs on every single bill that is pro-ethanol. But when you talk to her staffer, they provide you with like the boots on the ground type intel that you really can't get otherwise. And then by the time you leave the meeting, you're thinking, okay, we provided them with information that only we could provide, right? As vendors to the industry, as ethanol producers. Rick Schwark of Absolute Energy was on my team, and John Christensen of Christensen and Associates. It was the three of us, and so we gave them intel that only the three of us uniquely could provide, and then also, of course, then as the voice of the industry. And so they were very, appreciative of that, and we were able to give them, very concrete examples, which is always very helpful when they're talking to other members of Congress and their staffers. And also really important, I would say, statistics, right? That only we could deliver in the poignant way that we do as ethanol advocates. So yeah, I would say that the message was very well received and was impactful.
I think it's interesting you highlighted the staff. So many people really want to connect with the actual lawmaker, the representative, the senator, but you seem to feel like there's a lot of impact to be made with the actual staff, and that the staff, like you mentioned, are the boots on the ground. They're really kind of passing the message along.
Definitely. I mean, the staff, it is their job to be the eyes and ears of the congressperson, right? One single individual can only absorb and retain so much information. So it's why these congressional staffers are so important, because they're an extension ultimately of the congressperson. And so, yeah, speaking with them in many cases, it's not uncommon that we'll be communicating with them and they're like, oh yeah, and on that particular issue, and then they'll spill they'll spill some amount of detail that even we as people who talk about this stuff all day, every day, may not even realize, because it is their job ultimately to really comprehensively understand these issues. And so, yeah, I don't take for granted ever the opportunities to speak with congressional staffers. They're a really critical piece of the value chain of policy. I mean, ultimately, it's staffers that wrote the initial draft of the renewable fuel standard, that delivered, the industry that we all serve today. It's congressional staffers that, in many cases author initial legislation, or they're the ones, there really are the movers and shakers of DC. And so I don't take that ever for granted. And I find that in most cases, the congressional members themselves really trust their staffers. They're very, in many cases, you maybe will see a congressional member in their office and they'll hand you off to their staffer and they'll say, you're in great hands. I really, and they'll say something to the effect of, I trust this person. They are an extension of me. And yeah, it's always great to meet with a congressional member, of course, get a picture, say thank you, press them on hard issues if you get that opportunity. But it's not necessarily a bad opportunity to meet with a congressional staffer. In some cases, because you're able to get in kind of the more like nitty-gritty details of things. In some cases, it's an even better opportunity rather than speaking with the direct congressional members. So yeah, we spoke with several staffers today. Every single conversation was really, really well received, really engaging, and I enjoyed all of them.
Yeah, in some sense, you're really getting to relate the information to the person that has the ear.
100%.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I'm Laura McNamara in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill.